Death. This was one common theme of Dylan Thomas's work. Thomas was a mid-20th century Welsh poet whose writing also embraced themes like the unity of life, the connection between creation and destruction, and the overall unity of the universe. We can see death was the primary focus of Thomas's 1947 poem, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. This poem reads as follows. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. The wise men at their end know dark is right. Because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they've grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my Father, there on the sad height, curse, bless, mute now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. I first encountered this poem in the sci-fi movie Interstellar, a film about mankind's fight for survival. The premise of the film is that humanity is on the brink of extinction due to a worsening climate crisis and ensuing crop failures. But instead of succumbing to extinction, several astronauts embark on a dangerous mission to find a habitable planet in another galaxy. As the mission begins, the first two verses of this poem are recited by one of the main characters of the film. The significance of this movie is that both the movie and the poem essentially revolve around the same story, a fight for survival in the face of imminent death. In the poem, Thomas is addressing his father who is on the brink of death, urging him to push forward and continue to fight for survival, not succumbing to death. While the theme of the poem is clearly about perseverance, several poetic elements help convey this meaning and add subtlety to the poem. The phrases, do not go gentle into that good night, and rage, rage against the dying of the light, alternate at the end of each stanza and are both repeated a final time at the end of the last stanza. The repetition of these lines establish the theme of resistance to death and tie all the stanzas together. This also creates a sense of unity in the poem, tying into one of the themes that is present in much of Thomas's poetry. The poem also uses strong, intense language like burn and rave and blaze like meteors to convey the passionate resistance to death. The middle four stanzas of the poem illustrate how the thought of death affects different kinds of men. Thomas describes how death can destroy the spirits of wise men, good men, wild men, and grave men alike. Despite wise men spreading wisdom like shining light in darkness, night is still coming. And despite good men's deeds dancing brightly like waves in a bay, the light is still dying. Looming death forces all kinds of men to see the insignificance of their lives and how little of a difference they make in the face of death. Despite this, death does not completely extinguish people's passions for life. Even grave men with blind eyes could still blaze like meteors and be gay. The repeated phrases at the end of these four stanzas show that ultimately, all men will remain strong and resist death. No matter what your circumstances are or what kind of person you are, you'll still be strong in the face of death. This idea of unity in resisting death gives the poem a hopeful tone overall. These stanzas also convey the idea that ultimately we are all the same because we will all face death in the end. This further illustrates the unity of all life when put in perspective. So personally, this poem is meaningful to me because it was actually the first poem I heard that really drew me in and conveyed emotion. This made me appreciate the emotional depth of poetry and the ability of poems to inspire the audience. While watching the movie Interstellar, I understood the events that were happening, but this poem allowed me to emotionally grasp the full significance of the fight for survival. This poem showed me the power of poetry to really make the reader feel something. Hearing and reading this poem also instilled in me a desire to always maintain a strong spirit, even when faced with difficult circumstances. The theme of unity makes me feel more connected to the poem and encourages me to adopt the hopeful attitude that Thomas conveys. The passionate, emotional language that Thomas uses inspires me to fight against death, even though I'm not dying. But even though I'm not faced with death, there are still plenty of things in life that I'm faced with every day that make me feel insignificant, like even small personal insecurities. And as we saw in the poem, even when reduced to their most hopeless state, people can still respond with a fight. Although everyday challenges or little insecurities I face are not a fight for survival, I can still respond to these difficulties with a fight and overcome anything that comes my way. Thank you.